Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer. And I'm going to ask my audience here for a few favors. Please visit cobrt.com. Go ahead and sign up for our newsletter while you're there. Be sure to visit our events page and check out what we have going on. We have a few events coming up. Aerospace Day at the Capitol will be Monday, March 11th. We also have our State of Higher Education Forum, which we're very excited about. That will be on Thursday, April 11th. And I'm excited to get today's show started. We did a previous show with Space Foundation on the Space Commerce Program, which led into a new show with two guests, and we're talking about STEM education, which is something I am very passionate about, and I know our Cobert team is very passionate about. So I have in studio with me Bryan DeBates. He's the Vice President of Education for Space Foundation, and Audra Chapleski, Director of Education for Space Foundation.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Thanks, Alex.
Yes.
Yeah, super. You?
I am wonderful. Excited to talk about STEM education as we have moved into calling it in 2018. I think that was one of the bigger trends for it. So I'm excited to talk about that. But before we get to that, I want to talk about you and let our audience know a little bit about yourselves and your background. And Audra, I'm going to start here with you.
Very good. I went to school at Colorado State University a long time ago thinking I wanted to be a vet. That changed very quickly when I realized how difficult that career path was going to look. Actually kind of shifted gears and stopped school for a little while, went back to become a teacher as one of those non-traditional students. Went into space industry kind of training and education and worked in the classroom for about 14 years before I became an administrator and started opening schools to serve different needed kind of spectrums of kids. The last school that I supported and opened was called Vertical Skills Academy, and it served dyslexic kids, and we did a lot of science and STEM and makerspace with them to kind of help them get reintegrated into their classrooms.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about going from teaching into administration. How different were those roles? You hear of that quite a bit, actually, teachers going into administration. But I imagine the roles changed drastically.
Yeah, they're very, very different hats.
Yeah.
I think that for me, I was such a bossy teacher. It was a perfect transition. To go from bossy in the classroom to bossy to teachers, it's a very different transition because then you become part of the business side of it versus just the educating of the students, and yet you're still responsible for all of those things. I enjoyed the transition. It led me to be able to work for the Space Foundation with my administrative background, which is what really, when you look at your career paths, teaching was my passion, yet how can I keep that going, yet be on an administrative side? So I'm happy with the transition, and it wasn't easy. And I recommend that teachers do it because oftentimes the biggest complaint we hear from teachers is that administrators were never in the classroom. So when we see that happen and we see that transition and that growth for teachers, it's really a powerful movement.
I would imagine, yeah, that's something, because you can sympathize.
Yes.
And you understand, okay, you know what? Yeah, I actually did have 30 students, and that is too many. I can't handle 30 students. Let's change this on the administrative side. And the administrators that don't have that teaching background are very much like, 30? What? You can do that. What are you counting blocks? Right? And it's an insult to the profession.
Absolutely. And yet, administrators who weren't in the classroom work really hard to try to make that connection. But that partnershiping, it comes two ways. So you really have needed to have been the teacher dealing with the parents and the kids, and then it really helps to have had that background.
Oh, I imagine. So you didn't get harassed by other teachers for moving to the dark side then?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, okay. Just making sure.
No, it absolutely happened.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, tell me about your background.
So I actually started at South Dakota State University. I was an Air Force ROTC, was going to be an aerospace engineer. And through my freshman year, my eyesight went bad, and I ended up having to get glasses. And so I couldn't be a pilot anymore, which was my dream since I was 6. And so instead of going that route, I decided to do something much more dangerous, and that was become an elementary teacher. So I transferred schools, got my elementary teaching degree, and taught 4 years in South Dakota and 9 years in San Antonio, and was hired 12.5 years ago by the Space Foundation to be an elementary curriculum writer and instructor for our teacher professional development courses.
That is awesome. So just to clarify, because I was in the aviation industry for about 8 years, if you're going into the Air Force, yes, you do have to have perfect vision, but you didn't have the desire to go the commercial route, or Because it's an expensive route to take, for sure.
Well, you got to imagine the situation.
Yeah.
Cocky 18-year-old likes things that goes fast, and so I wanted to be a fighter pilot. They asked me to stay on, be a navigator, but if I couldn't fly the plane, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So a little bit of a control freak there. And so, I knew I had always had a gift for teaching and the different things I had done in my life up to 18, 19 years old, and I just knew that was my gift. And so that was really pulling me to go that route. And even though I wanted to be a pilot and an astronaut, the interesting thing is, as a teacher, I've probably done more space-related things than I ever would have done as a pilot. I've gone on the zero-G flights. I've been behind the scenes at most of the NASA centers. I've seen the Orion capsule being built, and a lot of those things I never would have happened if I had gone the pilot route.
Exactly, because you would have been out on assignment and doing, and yes, I can't speak too much to that, but yeah, I would imagine that you get way more experience with aerospace, which seems to be more your passion anyway.
It is.
Yes.
Ever since I was 6, that's what I wanted to do, was be a pilot and be an astronaut. From the age of 6, I had my entire career all planned out. And, sometimes life just goes sideways and you just deal with it and adapt. But you learn that you end up where you're supposed to be, so.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I had a different path. I started out as a psych major at 18, and I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist and help the world. And then 3 years in, I was like, this is awful. I hate all of this. What was I thinking? And then I got into journalism, graduated at 30 finally, and so I can appreciate a path that you start out on and you are just determined to be, and things don't go your way all the time. So let's talk about Space Foundation. So I do know that the Space Foundation is known for its Space Symposium every year. That's the big thing that everyone knows about Space Foundation. But there's a lot that we don't know, particularly on the education side. So let's dive into it.
Sure, you're right, Alex. Most everyone knows about us for the Space Symposium. We have a new theme at the Space Foundation now. We have a new Vice President of Strategic Communications, and his theme is 51 plus 1. And everybody knows what we do that 1 week of the year, but there's so much we do the other 51, and much of it is education. We're a 501c3, and so our mission is space education and awareness. And people don't know how much we do education-wise. We have the Discovery Center in Colorado Springs. We do a huge amount of global outreach, both in person and virtually, through our different programs. We have thousands of people that come through the Discovery Center each year. We reach thousands of students and community members around the world. And so that's what we're trying to do now, is tell that story of what we do the other 51 weeks of the year.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to provide that platform for you guys, because there is a lot that you do. I wanted to talk, you mentioned the Discovery Center, so let's talk about that.
Sure. We can talk a little bit about what we do. We offer Discover the Universe field trips. So schools will come through, teachers will come through with their school groups. It's open to the public. And so the masses of Colorado Springs, but we're always trying to do more outreach and reaching those further communities, can come through and really gain awareness about space. It's a true museum in that sense, that there's artifacts for them to look at, and they're beautiful things, and they're very well maintained and super exciting for kids. We also want to make sure that we're doing a lot of hands-on activities with them, so the littlest to the oldest can really gain some knowledge while they're there. One of the things that we're working on is kind of our Apollo event, and we're getting down to planning out those different kinds of things that we're going to do within the community and also within our Discovery Center. So we have some local events happening in March. At the end of March, we have a star party that will be contributing to all of the Apollo events. We're also doing, and one of the things we had talked about earlier is kind of the library events that we're going to be doing. And so about once a month, we have our educators going out into the community and reading and doing story times with all the different age groups in the libraries. Additionally, in July, towards the end of July, we're going to be doing a live stream with NASA, provided they come back to work. And also doing a family day, and that's July 20th. And so that'll be a nice event for people to kind of come into the Discovery Center and do some more learning and hands-on there.
I love that. Family Day, July 20th.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you mentioned here the star party at the end of March.
Yeah.
Go into a little in depth into that for me. I like that.
Star parties are fun. Right now we're switching. We were doing them monthly, but we found out that the masses really like to come in a big crowd. So we're going to switch those to quarterly and kind of beef them up a little bit. But one of the things that happens is we have a partnership with some of the kind of telescope groupies down there in the Springs. They'll come up, set up all their telescopes, and so outside we'll have all kinds of telescope viewing opportunities. And then inside we do all kinds of different hands-on activities, including kind of the virtual reality experiences. So each of our stations, so to speak, will be set up for that kind of event. Additionally, we kind of have this Mars Robotics Lab, which was Brian's brainchild. Tons and tons and tons and tons of red soil brought in for an actual Mars event for kids, so they can actually drive their rovers on there and experience kind of doing searches for different things. So when school groups come through, it's a pretty controlled scenario that we work with them, but they can look for hot and cold signatures in the ground because we actually have rovers on the ceiling. And so it's a really, really interactive opportunity. The kids do a lot of coding and programming with it. So yeah, we'll have that going as well.
That's okay. So by tons of red dirt now, are they driving it remotely? So it would be like a real life scenario. Someone's on Earth driving the rover, and then it's like a sort of an animatronic.
Correct. It's all it's all autonomous, and so the students will use iPads, and we've got these great. I mean, the programming's amazing. They've made it so simplified to get kids involved because coding is like the new big need from students in STEM. So the coding is really simplified and it's kind of drag and drop, and they can drag and drop and make their rover go to any particular destination. We have little markers so they can try to get to different fields. When school groups come in, what we often do is put half the school group in one side of the building and the other half in the Mars lab, so they have to communicate back and forth about what they need for missions, and
that's
very
so
fun.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I'm geeking out over here. Can I come play that? Like, is that something I can
We
do?
tend to often have adults pushing kids off the railings.
I would imagine, yes. And I did want to point out on the Discovery Center on your website, I was looking at it, and it serves pre-K through 20.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which is awesome, right? Because a lot of places you'll see pre-K through 6th grade or pre-K through 12. But you take it a step further.
Yeah.
So what we do in the Discovery Center, the Discovery Center itself is for all ages, but our programs, especially our formal education, like our field trips and stuff, we do pre-K through 12th grade, but then for our teacher training classes, we will go up through graduate level professional development courses, and so we kind of cover that 20. And so as the Space Foundation as a whole, we can get people excited, using space as the hook from cradle to grave, with our new gen programs, our space commerce program, the space symposium, everything. We've got that whole bandwidth covered.
That's awesome. Is there anything that we should share that's coming up soon that people should definitely get involved with, or just check out the website and see what floats your boat?
That might be the best thing.
Okay.
We have a lot.
We have a lot going on, both in state, in town, out of state, around the world. The things that they can get involved in, like you said, what floats their boat.
Yeah.
So many varied things that, the best thing to do would just be to check out our website, discoverspace.org. We have the library times for the little kids. We have adult events called Space After Dark. We just had one a couple of weeks ago where art nails, where people can come in and do some fun space activities, be a kid again. But there's always, adult beverages served as well.
Which makes for even more fun at
Absolutely.
a space event. I love that. So let's talk about STEM itself and the importance of STEM education. And for our audience that may not know what that stands for, it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we've changed a little bit over to STEAM, as I mentioned earlier. And that A stands for arts, which is becoming more and more prominent in the STEM fields.
It is. That, depending on if you're a purist or not, there can be some argument there of whether the arts belong in STEM. My personal opinion is I think it's very important to have that creative side of your brain fostered. Even if you're an engineer or mathematician, to solve those complex problems, you need the arts and that creative side. But essentially, and this is where as an education department at the Space Foundation, we see our importance is we are in a STEM crisis right now in the United States. We are graduating not nearly enough people in the STEM fields to fill all the available jobs. And even though we use space as a hook, when we go around the country, we don't tell people that you need to be an engineer, you need to be an astronaut, you need to be an astrophysicist. We also need the electricians, we need the welders. Those are all in the STEM fields, and even people graduating with those skills were short. And so not only does that hurt the economy, it also becomes a national security risk. A lot of the contracts that come down from the government that the big contractors like the Lockheed Martins and Northrop Grumman's fulfill, they're top secret missions, and you need a top secret clearance to work on that. Well, you have to be a U.S. citizen to work on those programs, and so if we don't have enough of those workers to fulfill the top secret satellites or whatever is being developed, that becomes a huge national security risk as a whole. In the aerospace sector, since they're the ones that fulfill a lot of these, that becomes critical. And especially now with plans to go back to the moon and go on to Mars, we are going to need those kids. The first person on Mars is in an American classroom right now. And we need to encourage those kids. I know it's astounding to think about it. But and when she plants that first flag on Mars and steps down off the lander, the kids we're reaching now, if you're not going to be stepping on Mars, you're going to be working on those programs. And so we need to get these kids encouraged now and get them in that STEM pipeline, because that's just going to help the economy. And as far as Colorado's concerned, we need to grow that organic workforce. We need to get people in that talent pipeline. There's so much talent here that the kids growing up here, we want to keep them here in Colorado. And not only that, we want to pull people in from out of state. Depending on what statistic you look at, Colorado's either the first or second ranked state in the country in the space industry. And so, we need to maintain that. And so if we can bring people in to Colorado and help fulfill those jobs, it's just going to make everything stronger here.
I definitely agree with you. In Colorado Business Roundtable, one of our big passions is workforce development. And one of our partners is the Colorado Workforce Development Council, and they just had their talent pipeline report, actually. And so you are correct. The blue-collar fields, for lack of a better term, really, continue to not have enough graduates every year. And I think it's still got that stigma of, electrician, but it's dirty, and it's dirty work, or plumbing, right? You don't have necessarily a good connotation with that, but it's great paying jobs. Yeah. You get great benefits, and there's already a job ready for you, and you don't have to spend 4 years and $50,000 in school debt to get that job.
Oh, exactly. I was on a tour at Lockheed Martin a couple of years ago, and I saw the new GPS satellite, GPS-3, that just went up, and they were building it. And one comment was made by our tour guide is, interesting, the two jobs that very rarely get laid off are the welders and the electricians. If things get tight, we can get rid of middle-level management or project managers, but the satellites, the rockets still need to be built, and the people that do that are, the welders and the electricians. And so even though, like you said, it may be looked down upon because it's a blue-collar job, they still make a lot of money. They make a good living, great benefits, and they're critical to the infrastructure of what we're trying to do in the space industry. Exactly.
They are very critical. And those trade jobs, I hopefully we can get some more people on board. But you brought up an interesting fact about national security being threatened. That is not something I had ever even considered being an issue.
Yeah, but you look at how many companies outsource, and we're having to bring in talent, and we've been reached out to to help curriculum for kids that want to come from high school overseas and come to college here. And what's amazing is you look at how many of those students want to come from overseas, and we have that many we have the students here in this country to fulfill those jobs. We just have to get them excited at an early age and keep them excited throughout their school. K to 12, well, elementary kids are excited about anything. It's not hard to get elementary kids excited about space, and and that's why we use space as the hook. We don't just teach space in our programs. We just use that as the hook to get the kids involved and engaged. Space is cool, and from there we can say, well, you know what, maybe you don't want to scream around the earth at 17,000 miles an hour. Maybe that doesn't excite you, but you know what, you could do this. You could program rovers, you could do graphics animation, you could build the rockets that are going to send the astronauts up. And so getting those kids excited and into the pipeline is just going to make everything better.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think one of the things that when I was in school, in elementary school, I got really excited about space, but the only job I could see in space was astronaut, right? That was the only path that I thought could be done. There wasn't a whole lot of education around all of the other things that you can do. And how amazing would it be to have a 10-year-old kid go, you know what, I really want to be in space, but I want to make something. And so he turns out to be a welder, and then he's like, look, yeah, the rocket that just went to Mars, I built that.
I think that's the thing we see often is that teachers, and I was one, so Brian was one, we tend to always focus on that astronaut. And when kids realize that there's like 4, it's kind of like, it's fewer odds than trying to play pro football. So as teachers, I always encourage my staff to really go outside of that. I mean, the bottom line is if you want to be in space, you just need to be an innovator. And once you're an innovator, you can take anything and do anything. I was just, you were talking about your visit to Lockheed Martin, but I was just out with, we just did a virtual, I'm sorry, not a virtual, an in-person week-long session in Brevard County in Florida. And we met with the sponsor, and they were talking to us about how they actually had to develop an education department for their corporation, which has nothing to do with education. But because they cannot employ enough people, they are creating a team that they're paying in-house to go out and do outreach to kids so they can get in those classrooms so that they can try to keep kids interested in space. Wow. So we lose them because of that astronaut philosophy. And the corporations are desperate. They're really desperate. Statistically, we're throwing money at girls in STEM. We're seeing a decrease in their investment in STEM. So there's a lot that has to kind of be really reevaluated about how we're providing this information to students and really keeping them engaged for it. And that's part of what we do is with our lessoning and our programming and the staffing that I have, which is amazing. These teachers go out, I staff teachers, and they go out to train the teachers and get the kids engaged and keep them engaged by doing the hands-on stuff in front of them because it's just not happening,
Yeah, I would imagine there is a lack of passion after you find out that the one big main job isn't available to you. But yeah, so keeping that passion is amazing and great work. I didn't realize there was a decline in women in STEM, actually.
Yeah, it was shocking to hear.
Yeah.
Shocking.
I thought we were doing so well.
Yeah, as a woman, I was so disappointed. But I think that, again, when we really... I think we make it fearful for some students. Again, we make it this kind of really pillared, at the top of the pillar. That's not what we need to be doing to kids. We need to help support them understanding, again, that there's 1.5 million positions that will get you into space, so to speak.
Right, exactly. And space isn't, you may not be able to do be on the rocket, but you've had plenty of opportunities to do the 0G, right?
Absolutely. So even as a teacher, you can be involved in the space industry.
Absolutely. I love that. We do have to take a break here. I'm not excited about that because we're having a great conversation. But I want to ask our audience to stay tuned during this break. We will be right back. In the meantime, go ahead and check out discoverspace.org, and you can find some information about some cool opportunities and how to get involved with Space Foundation and all of their cool programs that they have going on. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Check out this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. We'll be right back. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I have in studio with me Bryan DeBates, Vice President of Education, and Audra Chapleski, Director of Education, both for Space Foundation. And as we learned in the first segment, I wasn't aware that Space Foundation had much of an education implementation, but they do. And it's quite an awesome, extensive program. And so I'm excited to talk more about it. But we got to talking on the break, and I have a question for you. Can someone my age still get involved into a space or STEM career? How's that looking?
Oh, absolutely. It's never too late. In fact, next month on President's Day, February 18th, we're hosting a Women's STEM Career Fair at the Discovery Center. And it just echoes what we talked about in the first segment about the need to fill that pipeline. Beyond aerospace, the STEM careers that are out there that are available, we're not filling those slots. And so companies are reaching out. It doesn't matter if it's an engineering firm, an architect firm, geology, whatever, finance. We need those STEM careers. And so it's never too late to get involved. And so if anybody has that interest or that desire, I would definitely encourage them to make that move and take a leap of faith, because the positions are out there.
Awesome. And I want to mention here a little bit the difference between, because I don't want to have to go and start another 4-year program.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably good, because they're not looking for that.
Okay.
When we talk to these large companies, and even in recruiters, they're looking at resumes that aren't listing out those 4-year degrees. They're really looking for the certifications. This is a new thing that research is kind of finding, that these corporate partners are really wanting to hire someone that they can train and groom into their own person, yet come in with a much broader spectrum of knowledge, and the certification programs are really a hit right now. I wouldn't be surprised, and all the educators out there are going to send me an email, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start really seeing the education force and parenting driving away from encouraging those kids to follow that traditional path of the 4-year schools. We're just looking for those certifications. And the bottom line is, when you talk to the Amazons and you talk to the Lockheed Martins, they're really looking for a resume that says you're an innovator, that you're creative, that you're you're going to find a solution to a problem. They're also looking for all those people skills. And so when we go into the classrooms, that's part of what we do, is teaching these kids project management, so that they can go from the beginning of a project to an end of a project successfully, and they have the language and they have the lingo, and they can kind of complete a project well, but not have all the information. And so that's, again, where we're getting away from some of those 4-year programs.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned that you have a daughter currently going through a secondary education.
I do.
And it's expensive.
Yeah.
I'm still paying for the 3 years that I took when I was 18, right? It's expensive. And if you can go out and get a job with a 6-month certificate and get a well-paying job at that, that's an amazing feat. And I hope that a lot more parents are encouraging students.
Agreed.
Their kids to take that path. Nothing wrong with 4-year, 8-year education, by all means. If that's truly a passion for you, pursue that.
Yeah, and they're still a valuable tool. I mean, we haven't gone completely away from that option. So again, we're not steering kids away from going to college.
Yeah.
We're just saying that there's some alternative paths that are pretty effective right now.
Yeah, because not everyone does well in a classroom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. College isn't for everyone.
Exactly. Some of us need that hands-on learning, which is what certificates are great for.
Yes.
I'm going to change gears a little bit here, and we've been talking about education for kids, but let's talk about some professional development opportunities for everyone, including teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the teacher kind of reaches that we have, and I have this amazing department of educators that work with me, is making sure that we're promoting the space awareness to the teachers. And one of the things that we do in one of our programs is called Space Cross Curriculum. It can be anywhere from 1 day to a week-long program for teachers to participate in a professional development. We can offer to their location. We offer them in-house. We'll offer them nationally. We're kind of offering them globally. One of the purposes of this is that we're trying to target the teacher, because when you really look at the logistics, we can hit one teacher, and then that teacher, he or she, will go back into their classroom and potentially hit a much broader reach of students than we could in 1 day. So our classes are anywhere from 10 to 50 in size. And we have scholarship programs that the teachers can apply for to try to get their tuition for it paid. Some of our donors, which are, we have some amazing, our list of donors is just superb. but often they want to support the teachers because they know the reach is going to be greater. We also have donors that will support the student outreach, and so we'll do space in the community, which is, again, it's kind of a 3-day to a 5-day event. Always ends in a teacher PD because we want to make sure that we hit the teachers as well, and usually those are national or global. And so we just finished one in Brevard County, as I mentioned earlier, serving for 3 days, and we hit about 4,000 students. And then we served teacher on that last day and just did a lot of hands-on activities. The goal is really to be able to give them something that they can take back to their classroom and implement immediately. And again, start making that change for students. So we have a couple coming up. So, teachers, go to that Discover Space, and we'll see if we can't get you in. The other thing that we're really working on is kind of a virtual outreach. We know a lot of teachers that we're reaching are local because it's very easy for them to drive from Denver to Colorado Springs and attend a live session. But that we know how many we're missing when we're not hitting that national or that global level. So the virtual is kind of a pilot program. We're looking for companies to kind of help support that. But the bottom line is we've done a couple beta tests. It's gone pretty well. We've had teachers log in, and we discussed kind of how we get you the materials in your hands, and then you just kind of logged in from home in your pajamas with your coffee and your dog sitting next to you and learning the same material that the in-house teachers are learning.
That's my kind of learning.
I agree. I agree. Another little part that we're kind of bringing in that's just started, and my team is really working hard to kind of bring this to fruition, but is kind of a lunch break session for teachers. We know, and I hear continuously from principals that their teachers don't want to work on a Saturday because they're overworked, and Saturdays are tough and after school is tough. So we'll see if we can't get them at a lunch hour and give them a little free webinar in the beginning here, and then we'll see how it goes from there. So we'll keep you updated on the website and how that's going along. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like on your lunch break, right, you're kind of like, you're feeling pretty good for the day. You're not, you haven't had that crash yet, that 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock crash, and you're not exhausted after 5 o'clock, which is when most administrators leave, or most teachers leave. It's not at 3 p.m., right? You're not out the door with the bell.
Yeah, we know those 5 o'clock teachers are home grading papers too. So if we can get them a little break where they just learn a quick lesson and can maybe use it even that afternoon, that's kind of our goal.
That's awesome. Yeah. Any thoughts on integrating a teacher and a student program together? So in other words, the teacher can be in the front of the class and they're learning with the kids.
Yes. So we've partnered with in the past the Project Management Institute Educational Foundation, and part of it was that where we would bring the teachers in, train them on project management, really stretch that out so they really had a great knowledge, so that when we sent them back to their classrooms and they would implement a really long project, I mean, we're talking about potentially over a semester, that then we would continue to support them, but they're working directly with the kids, and then the kids come back to us and kind of fulfill their project on site. So there's kind of this long-term partnership that we work on building. One of the other programs that we're really fond of is the Teacher Liaison Program. And teachers will apply to us, and they're really the top-notch teachers. These are not, and I'm not picking on you teachers that aren't run-of-the-mill, but it's the ones that really are super engaged in space. And those are math teachers and language arts teachers and art teachers and music teachers. But they apply to the program, and once accepted, they really become our little cadre of teachers, just the ones we know we can refer to. So we'll work tightly with them to make sure that things are continuing in their classrooms and continuing to get students engaged. And they often get early registration deals and, kind of in-house specials. They also get to attend the Space Symposium, so that's a kick for becoming a TL. I actually became connected with the Space Foundation when I became a TL back in 2008. So
TL.
Teacher liaison, sorry, I do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I became a teacher liaison back in 2008. Brian is one, and some of our, a couple of my educators are also teacher liaisons. So
that's awesome. Is there any thoughts to having these kids make real things that can be implemented right now?
Yeah, so we can talk about the plans.
We do. We do have some plans. One of the things that we haven't made a big splash about it yet, but our Discovery Center is expanding. We're going to be exactly.
There it is.
We're going to be tripling in size. Our Discovery Center. We're going to go from 47,000 square feet to 132,000. And one of the things we want to have in there, my goal is to have an engineering lab where my thought is right now to have like an after-school program for kids who want to get involved in these higher level engineering classes, and there may be one or two at a school, and so a school is not going to do a program for one or two students. So what I like to do is have the kids come in after school, and then they would design and build maybe CubeSats or experiments that would be flown on the International Space Station. So yeah, we're hoping that once we get this expansion completed, that will be a big part of what we do for students, to give them that real world connection.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're working really hard with a bunch of partners to kind of make sure that we're making those connections that are going to allow those things to really happen quickly. There's a lot of companies out there that are supporting kids this way, but I think what we do is so unique with the combination of the Discovery Center and our educational program that our partnerships are really valuable. And so we work with a couple of companies right now that we're in conversations with them. They actually build kits to do it, so we can bring those in and really get the kids to just get them up there. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that, and to know that what I'm working on right now will be somewhere, and I can see it, right? It's not just going to go in an art display in a hallway of a school that only my mom might see once, right? This is going to go somewhere. What I've made has real implications in the real world.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely, and that's one of the things that we're looking at with this expansion of our Discovery Center. We're going to be setting up what we call a Center for Education Innovation, and underneath that, the goal is what we've kind of coined the term immersive education for students. Back when we were in school, and if you ever asked your algebra teacher, why do I need to learn this? Well, the answer was always, because I said so, and that was the end of the discussion.
I was one of those algebra teachers. No.
But kids nowadays are so connected to the entire world. Telling them that isn't going to inspire them. What they want to see is, how am I learning now going to help me connect to the world? How can I improve the world? And so with this Center of Education Innovation, we're going to be looking at best practices, utilizing different technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, in the formal education setting, informal education setting. How can we engage students better, teach them better that way? But we also put students in what we call real world scenarios, like our Mars robotics lab that Audra was talking about, where we can have a group of students, a team of students, designing and executing an entire mission start to finish. They're driving rovers on Mars. We have kids that put on spacesuits, go through the airlock, get out on the surface, collect samples. We have it now. We've done a couple of pilot tests where we have students drive the rovers in from Kabul, Afghanistan, and Pune, India, and so we can have students from anywhere in the world driving these rovers on Mars and having that experience, just like the real rover drivers would. And so that's kind of where we're going with our Center for Education Innovation, is researching the best practices on how to use space to get kids excited about STEM careers.
That's so exciting. Golly, I wish I had had something like this when I was younger, right? I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Like, where was this?
Yeah,
absolutely.
But I love that you get to be on the forefront of seeing that and seeing the kids interacting and in classrooms and being a part of that.
Yeah.
I hope we have a big wave of students that really get involved with these STEM careers, because they get to see it hands-on.
Yeah.
That's exciting, you guys. I'm so excited.
It's a cool place to go to work every day, I will say that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know, when we talk about everything being so local, that virtual outreach is so huge. We talk about Kabul and we talk about Afghanistan and India, and we know that we can do this for these kids. And so there are teachers that can't afford to do those field trips that are out in eastern Colorado and all the way to Florida and all the way to California. And if we can get them to pipe into our Mars yard, they can have their kids doing the same experiences and still feeling the same. Curiosity was up there and we weren't hand touching it. So that distance learning is not a problem for us. And that's what we really want to make sure that teachers understand, that we offer these scholar trips and we can make it so that you can afford it as a teacher in your classroom, but the kids can get the same experience as the ones that live in Colorado Springs.
Right, which is important.
Yeah,
because not everyone has that same setup. But the fact of the matter is that most of these careers are done remotely anyway, and so that's
it's a
the
good
whole
practice.
Point. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about some trending topics in aerospace and education, and where we like to see this going. I know that we talked about education, and I believe it's slowly changing, right? We talked about why do I need to know this in algebra class, and quite honestly, this day and age, if you took a 7th grade history test, you could ask almost every one of those questions onto Google and get the right answer.
Yeah, faster.
Right?
Yep.
Faster. And so that's not something I think kids necessarily need. So what you need to teach instead of those history facts, because they can look them up, it's how to look up those sources correctly. Right?
Agreed.
So I like to think that we are changing the way the education system works. It's coming slowly, but it was built in a time when we were very much factory oriented, right? The bells and everything still.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the one change that I always tried to make sure that teachers were aware of is, as much as we, when the technology and the smartphones came out, we had all of this uproar in the teacher community about should we allow these things in our classrooms, and superintendents saying no, and covering whole districts with that kind of banner. But I think that there's a fear of the technology taking over, and teachers are so tied to standardized assessments and standardized performance. I remember walking into a school where a principal said to the teacher, "You're not on page 86." And that part of education is where we're failing our students. We need to start bringing in these smartphones. We need to bring in this technology. It's happening without us as teachers, so we might as well embrace it and start to use it the right way. So when we talk about how we change the face of education to make sure that we're serving these kind of STEM pipelines and these careers, we have to embrace this. We have to use this in our classroom. And so as a teacher, I recommend you control it then. So use it to your advantage. There are so many apps out there to help kids learn to code. There are so many apps out there helping them get these certifications in high school for, have certifications when they graduate. My kid's a perfect example of graduating with a semester full of credits done as a high schooler. So there's no reason why we're not promoting the use of these things appropriately so that those careers are interesting to them. I think we fail at letting them know what other careers there are that are all still in that STEM industry. So, I challenge teachers consistently to make sure that you're really looking at the current trends and making sure that you're teaching to those. So I know the superintendents don't like that, but that's
well, superintendents need to get on board with the technology too, right? Allow those phones.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we can get kids to log on and get facts from our Discovery Center every day. I mean, part of the AR, VR that we're working on is going to be bringing that to their face every day on apps. We're working with some great companies that are starting up with some new really child-safe apps. I'm actually speaking in March at an event talking about how we can use these things in our Discovery Center safely. And I think that that's the fear often is there a safety component to all of these things? And if we can ensure that, then we really shouldn't be so fearful of having kids kind of get involved that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the technology and STEM, right?
Yeah.
That's cybersecurity is one of those areas we don't know what kind of jobs are going to be there in 5 years, let alone in 15 when these kids are graduating finally.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
And so, cybersecurity is one of those it's a safety measure we have to worry about.
Absolutely.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Alex. We don't need to teach kids rote memory anymore. It's not memorizing the dates of a battle in the Civil War, or what happened on this date when you can look it up in 5 seconds.
Sorry, history teachers.
Yeah, sorry, history teachers. I remember my chemistry teacher in high school. We had to memorize the periodic table. What we need to do is kind of what you're referring to is we need to just teach students how to think and how to process the information. A lot of the 21st century skills that are bubbling up and that have changed in just the last couple of years, it's speaking to that. It's how to find the right information and how to disseminate it and how to decipher it. What is valuable, what is not. Not everything out on the internet is good information, and so a lot of what we need to teach kids is to find the right answers and then think through, okay, is this relevant? Is this good information? Is this bad information? And then pick out the stuff that you need. That's what we need to be teaching kids, and then that will help them prepare for the careers that are going to be coming up. It's the innovating, it's the processing, it's the thinking. Those are going to be the skills that are going to be essential for the STEM careers in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The thinking part of it, I think a lot of us end up at jobs where it's just you go to work and you do your thing and you move on, right? You need to work in that thinking, and these are careers that continually make you do that.
Yeah, and we were asked by your Alex, about how does someone that's not 18 and younger kind of get into these career pathways, and I think that's it. Is we have this belief that there was kind of the book learning And thankfully, the younger, kind of that new millennial generation they're really challenging the classic beliefs of everything. And I think that don't be disturbed if you're 25 years old and you want to change paths, because I think this is the right time for the thinkers that we have to really get into this field. Companies are hiring them, so this is the right way to go.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I am a millennial, and I hate.
I am not.
Well, I hate the negative connotation that it brings, because
it's
not true. We do question a lot of beliefs, but I like to think that our baby boomer parents forced us to think.
Oh, there you go.
And question things and question authority, right? They were the originators of that. Let's talk hippies, right?
Right.
But that being said, in all fairness, we grew up with technology.
Yep.
Right. So I did have to do the rote memorization. I learned the periodic table as well, but at the same time, I was also logging on, and I had the World Wide Web at my fingertips, and I got to ask these questions and get real-time answers from somebody across the globe. It was amazing, right?
Yep.
And so growing up with that, we were like, okay, you know what? I did have this job, and now I'm 25. I feel stuck, and I want to learn something new. Let's get the certification instead of going back for another 4 years.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Because those 4-year commitments are really they're really kind of itemized to what they're doing. And I think when we look at the STEM careers, they need so many people that are able to do so many things in every job now. So I think that interest in really kind of broadening your spectrum, there's always this kind of conversation education about, breadth versus depth. And I think that's where we start to fail. So we really need people to be broader learners and broader thinkers. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that, actually. Yeah, that's not something I'd heard, but I like that a lot. So with these last few minutes, let's talk about what what we have going on at Space Foundation. How can I get involved as a business? Can I give money? I'm sure I can.
Yeah, we are a 501.
Yes, exactly. But tell me more about how I can get involved as a business or even as an individual to help to make sure that this education's getting where it needs to go.
Yeah, so, as the director of the education department, I have a very easy answer. We're always looking for corporate sponsors. So many of these school districts cannot afford to bring us in. It's a big program, and we really want to make sure that we're hitting kind of all those districts. Oftentimes we'll see donors that are very specific to a targeted area, and that's what we like to see, because they have, their heart and soul is within an area, a localized area. And because we can travel and bring our teachers anywhere, that's the way to do it. So we're always looking for donors all across. And, we actually have a great donor from the East Coast that's provided teacher performance or teacher professional developments and has supported that. This is, we're going on continuous years with them. The other thing is, too, that teachers should know that as we get these donations in, we can do those scholar trips so that they can come for themselves, which I mentioned earlier, but they can also, we've got scholar trips for students. And so about 20% of our field trips are served through donors that give us small amounts. I mean, from $5 up to $1,000, and then we have great corporate ones that do, much greater service. But we're appreciative of all of it. And so, again, going to the website is real easy for those kind of donors that are down the street. But then also just calling our philanthropy department and really kind of having some good conversations can help us support on a bigger scale as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would just add that it doesn't matter what your interest is. If you're interested in fostering education in any way, we have a program that would probably interest you, that you would be passionate about, whether it be teachers or students or global outreach, whatever that passion might be. And it's not just in our education department either. Diane and Shelley were here talking about the space commerce program. So, you could even get involved in that way. There's a space symposium as well. So we cradle to grave. If you're passionate about space and you want to help our outreach with that, the Space Foundation, we're getting to tell the next great human adventure in space. And so, if you want to be a part of that, we can help foster that.
We're always looking for volunteers.
Good to
always
know.
looking for volunteers.
Good to know, because
Yes.
I get some cool points for volunteering. So.
Yes, very good. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you both so much for being here. It has been a pleasure having you on. And be sure to visit, again, discoverspace.org. Like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. You can find more information about this show at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Look up Bryan DeBates or Audra Chapleski or Space Foundation, and those will pop up for you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Alex.